Mike Wiesner, my favorite online show. Thank you, man. Harold says, I only have one other favorite show, the new Kung Fu on the CW. That's right. Yes, Grasshopper. You know, I share this show often with the Chicago Astronomical Society. I like that because of the fact that George Ellery Hale got his start in Chicago. So they have there's many different places where there's legacies of astronomy, of course, but Chicago is near and dear to me because I'm a huge fan of George Ellery Hale. So there is no audio with this video here, but it's pretty cool. The fastest rotating brown dwarf ever seen. Although it's about the same size as Jupiter, it's 43 times more massive and rotates almost 10 times faster, if you can imagine that.
Too bad there's no narration or anything with that.
Well, you kind of have to narrate it to yourself. NASA can't do everything.
Oh, yes, they can. They look how well they fake the moon landings.
Oh, you're just lucky that
Wait a minute, did I say that?
you did say that. Yeah, can't them's fighting words.
Yeah, it's just all in good fun.
Yeah. So anyhow, welcome everybody. You've arrived here on Thursday, and we switched our shows around. Yesterday we had to bring in the Dan George on the wing yesterday because he had a conflict for today. That probably won't happen in the future, but anyhow. So we decided to put on this program, FirstLight Chronicles, on today. So again, a temporary situation.
Why don't you talk about what's going to happen tomorrow as well?
I will, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Kent Marts and I are flying to San Antonio, Texas, and we're heading out towards Hill Country in Texas to do some, we're going to scout site location for the eclipses that are coming up in 2023 and 2024. If everything's successful, we will be hosting a trio of star parties. And when I say a trio, I mean 3 star parties that would happen in this Hill Country area of Texas. One of these star parties happens on the same, it's all in the same spot. Okay, that's our evil plan, is that we would bring you to the spot where you can experience the 2023 annular eclipse of the sun and the 2024 total eclipse of the sun. So the third star party actually is a pre-event that would happen in 2022 in April in Hill Country. Okay, we're going to take you to the same place during the dark of the moon. In the month of April when the 2024 total would occur. And a lot of people who chase eclipses, one of the things they like to do is to actually go to the site, check it out, experience it, and one way, really the best way to do it is just to go and be there pretty close to the time of the total eclipse month and date, okay? We're going to take people there during the dark of the moon weekend for this star party, and would allow you to get your spot picked out so that you can understand where the sun's going to rise and set. And we would during the day we would as close as we can sort of simulate. We'd say, okay, first contact happens now, and these kinds of things, so that you can kind of practice a little bit. Then you go there for 2023. You would see a ring of fire annular eclipse, which would be totally cool. That'll happen, I think it's October 2023.
Correct.
And then we would go back the following year in April for the 2024 total eclipse. But by this time, you would have already, if you go to all the star parties, you would be very familiar with the site. You'd know where to drive, you know what to do, you know how to get set up, and you should have, lots of great stories to tell from these 3 star parties. So a very special kind of trio of star party events that we're planning on. But we need to go check it out and get the lay of the land. I'm going to bring my drone with me. We'll do some flyovers and see what the challenges would be, or what the possibilities are like, and how many people we can accommodate. We'd like to accommodate as many people as we can. And we wanted to have it in a nice, secure area and all the rest of that. So if it all works out, it should be just really fantastic. So, and we will be, of course, we will offer Explorer Alliance members special pricing on these events, and I expect it to fill up really rapidly. If Motel 6s can fill up charging exorbitant fees, we're not going to charge exorbitant fees. We're going to cover our costs to do the event. But we want to do things like it's dry camping, so we want to bring in showers, for example. We want to bring in, of course, toilets and dumpsters for trash, and we want to have security there. We want to have a first aid station there, all of that stuff. So it's comfortable, safe, and we want you concentrating on your astronomy and experiencing Texas dark skies, and just to have you experience eclipses like that back to back. You'll never forget it, ever, ever, ever. So it will be amazing, and we would love to have for those of you who are listening around the world, we'd love to have you come too. So it'll be really cool.
The point of all this is that from the experience that we all had in the eclipse of 2017, moving is going to be very difficult. I was in Casper, Wyoming. Scott, you were in Casper. We weren't together. Yep. Didn't work here then, but we were in the same gym. I was up on top of the mountain, and getting out was tremendously terrible. And I plan on not leaving that day. I think leaving the day of the eclipse in South Texas.
That is a bad idea.
That's take
a bad idea.
2 hours. It's 2 hours to San Antonio. I can easily foresee this
taking all day to get back to San Antonio.
8 or 10 hours to get back to San Antonio because of gridlock.
You're going to miss your flight if you plan a flight on that day. Okay, plan on that. All right.
Right.
You're going to if you're driving it, you're just going to be sitting there burning up gas. Okay, you want it.
Yeah, but all the back roads are going to get clogged. That's what happened in Casper when we tried to leave and drive back home. All the back roads were clogged up and were at a dead standstill. It was crazy. Yeah. This is going to happen in South Texas because the farther south you go,
millions of people are going to go to South Texas to see this.
The farther south you go, the better chance you have of seeing the eclipse. Now, in a perfect world, we'd all go down into central Mexico, but I think that we all don't want to go down into central Mexico. Just not worth the risk and heartache and things like that.
Well,
so
it could be done. It just becomes more complicated, and security becomes, security can be done as well, but it will require more than just your normal security. So,
right. So we're that's where we're staying in the south.
And when you take people to another country, then there's, flying people out for emergencies and stuff like that. That gets to be expensive. So we're going to keep it simple. Texas is a great place to go for this eclipse. It has the best chances for clear weather. The eclipse actually goes right through Arkansas. So for us here at Explore Scientific in Northwest Arkansas, it could be a very short drive, but in April, Arkansas is back-to-back thunderstorms. So
we could literally in an hour and 15 minutes be on the center line from here easily.
Yeah, but and it may turn out that's the way it is. That could happen. It could be a very lucky situation. I don't want to plan on that. I want to hedge our chances and go down closer to the border of Mexico, and and do it with as many great amenities as we can. I don't know if you guys have ever been to San Antonio, but San Antonio is a great city. Lots of great history there. Incredible Mexican restaurants are down there, so and there's music, there's so there's lots of stuff to do.
And this is more than just an eclipse star party. This is a true star party with night viewing as well, because you can't have any newer moon, darker nights than what you're going to have at an eclipse.
That's right. You're going to be there. Yeah. So, you'll be doing your deep sky astrophotography. You'll be experiencing an eclipse. There is stuff to do down there, so I think it's about where we're going to go is 2.5 hours away from
right.
San Antonio.
Northwest of San Antonio.
Yeah.
Don't want to say exactly where, but in the neighborhood of Uvalde. If you want to look up on a map and see where the neighborhood we're going to, it's around Uvalde, Texas somewhere.
Book Davy says, be careful of the street side taco shops. And Cameron says there's a nice river walk there too, and there is. Of course, this is where the Alamo is, and So there's that going on, but some great restaurants and great nightlife there. So you'll want to make San Antonio part of the trip, I would think.
Right.
We definitely will.
So the reason we're telling everybody about this is not just to talk about the event, but it impacts, because of our travel, it impacts the broadcast schedule tomorrow.
Yes. And the reason for that, well, we leave in the afternoon to catch our flight. So we're going to move the focus on astrophotography program to 1 p.m. Central. So, unfortunately, don't expect a 4 o'clock program unless I happen to I might prop up my iPhone and broadcast here on Facebook or something like that, just a little live snippet. And we will be taking video and photos, and we'll share with you what we find out about this site as we go forward. So,
okay,
yeah.
All right. So
yesterday you mentioned that you wanted to give to show people how to polar align their mount in broad daylight,
right,
which is a useful technique.
And this may not be the most exact technique in the world, but it is the technique that I mastered myself. So, and, talk to people, and I kept going to star parties and trying to figure out, because as soon as the sun goes down, people want to start looking at Jupiter and Saturn, or, the moon or whatever. And I never would be polar aligned, and I have to say, well, okay. And I'd get it there. But then once the sun went down, I'd want a polar line, and I'd try and get down the polar scope, and people would line up and start grumbling, and I'd be trying to get polar lined. And I said, how do I do this? And finally I realized that because the PMC8 go-to system knows where the sun is exactly in the motor counts where the sun should be, if you're polar lined, I developed what I call the backing into alignment method. I backwards back into it. And I do that by getting oriented north and level as best I can, and then using the shadow of the telescope to use the azimuth and altitude adjustment of the mount to make the shadow of the telescope as precise and square as possible, and then use image projection of the sun to get it centered up. So here we go. We're going to talk about it a little bit. Did it switch? Yes, this method relies on the fact that the go-to system knows where the sun is. It'll achieve a good rough polar alignment that'll keep the object in the eyepiece for long periods. Now, people say, okay, what's long periods? We did this yesterday, and I was showing Ross and Chuck, two of the customer service guys who are part of Focus on Astronomy, this method, and they were totally amazed. They were trying to look at the sun, and it kept drifting out. And I said, oh, no, let me show you. And so we moved the tripod a little bit, got it squared up, and then did the go-to, and didn't do a precise job at all. The sun stayed in the eyepiece of using an ED80 and a 100 degree, 14 millimeter Explore Scientific waterproof eyepiece, stayed in the eyepiece for about 45 minutes, which is pretty darn good for not polar aligning. There have been times that I've done this during the day that through just dumb luck got an amazing polar alignment. I did it once at a star party, a little small star party we had at a site down in the National Forest on Labor Day a couple of years ago, and had a 100 degree 5.5 on Saturn, and it stayed on Saturn for 4 hours. I was just astounded that I had managed to achieve a perfect polar alignment during the day using shadows. So it has benefits for star parties and getting setting up before the sun goes down. It gets you at least close. So how do you do it?
Something we should say, Kent, and Richard Grace is reminding us we should warn not to look at the sun without a proper solar filter.
Correct. And we do that on the next slide.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Okay. So we go through step 11. I probably should have put this at the top, and all these slides I keep, I'm going to rearrange it. But the following steps after this, you are using the sun coming through the telescope. Do not look in the telescope at this point. Okay. Now, this uses the sun. So you start off by orienting the tripod in the northern hemisphere or the south pole in the southern hemisphere as best you can. Using a compass can help. However, remember to account for magnetic declination. Magnetic declination is caused by the curvature and ground magnetic lines. And in the United States, on the East Coast, it's off by as much as 12 degrees and nearly 16 degrees on the West Coast. So where you live is highly dependent on that north arrow on your compass not pointing north. Here in Northwest Arkansas, we're off by a degree. So it's pretty darn close. But if you're going to use a tripod compass, you have to understand magnetic declination and account for it for your specific site. All right. Once you get it lined up north best you can, level the tripod. That's a key. Always get the tripod level for go-to. Install the go-to head in the telescope with the dust cover on. Be sure to cover the finder scope because I made that mistake once. Luckily, I didn't look through it, but I had my arm up there, and suddenly I started feeling a very prickly burning sensation on my forearm and jumped out of the way and found out that I had not put a cover on the finder scope and the sun was coming through.
You didn't smell steak burning or something.
Believe me, I was moving pretty quick. It did not take very long for that to start getting really hot in my arm. Ensure the elevation is set to your latitude and the telescope is in the home position. So the home position means pointed due north, the counterweight shaft straight down. That's something you need to learn where that is and mark it, at some other point than when you're trying to do this. All right. Now I'm assuming that you've got the dust cover and the finder scope covered. So we're going to execute a slew to the sun. Okay. So now we're going to align using the shadow of the telescope, but don't manually move the telescope. Don't grab the telescope and move it. Don't, turn the declination of the RA. Don't use the left, right, up, down buttons to zero out the shadow. We're going to do that at the very end, but that introduces error. All right. Use the altitude and azimuth adjustments on the mount to adjust the shadow. So you're going to move the shadow left, right, and up and down and get it as precisely parallel to the sun as possible. And generally, you can use it with the eyepiece or there's little screws sticking out, and you can see those shadows and get it to where you see just a good hard image of the sun. I'll show you some pictures in a moment. The goal is to get that shadow precise, meaning I quit doing that. So once it's close, remove the eyepiece, and this can be done without a diagonal or with. Today, the pictures I took, we did with a diagonal, but you can remove the diagonal and use it straight out of the sun if you want to. Caution, the following steps involve using sunlight coming through the telescope. Do not look in the telescope. It'll put your eye out. All right, so use a piece of paper, piece of cardboard, something, to locate the image of the sun projecting from the back of the telescope. Hold the paper far enough away so the sun image is large enough to not burn the paper, obviously. Caution must be used. I probably need to put in here, don't let kids be around when you're doing this. All right. Continue to use the altitude and azimuth adjustment to fine-tune the shadow until it lines up as best as possible with the barrel of the diagonal. So you want to get it centered coming out. At some point, you may have to use the left, right, up, down buttons to fine-tune the adjustment. All right. Replace the dust covers, install the solar filter, or wait for darkness to arrive. If you're going to be viewing the sun, put the filter on and go to it. If you're going to wait for darkness to arrive, then you can wait. Now, one benefit of doing it with the solar filter on is you can see which way the sun's drifting and work to zero out that error so that you get longer eyepiece time. So here's a couple of pictures. Here's Ross. We know the lines on the parking lot line up almost exactly north. And so we can plunk things down real well. and he's just sort of eyeballing where, yeah, that's about where Polaris is.
Right. Now you could do you can cheat a little bit and go to the site ahead of time at night, okay,
And mark the spots.
and mark, line up where Polaris is, okay, and then mark off points on your tripod. We did these kinds of things out in the Anza-Borrego desert,
Yeah, you could drive if you're in like your yard or someplace. You can drive a iron stake where they go,
right?
and come
Oh yeah,
back.
you could bury nails in there and go use like a metal detector.
Yeah,
I've
piece
seen
of
people do
rebar,
that too.
piece of
Yeah.
rebar or something, and that way you can come back to the same spot over and over again. Obviously, that's contingent upon your tripod being the legs extended exactly the same every time.
Right. There's
Easiest
a
thing to
question before you get too far in
sure,
here.
sure.
Cameron wants to know if you could adapt this technique using the waxing moon instead of the sun, since my scope is in my backyard and won't see the sun in the afternoon.
Okay, so the way you would do that in my mind is you can't use the shadow because the moon's not going to produce a shadow. But Cameron is thinking exactly, and it's a great question, Cameron. You can do the same thing. You just have to locate the moon using the azimuth and adjustment portions of your tripod. So it's the same exact process. At that point, then you could use an eyepiece, and obviously, if you have your finder scope well collimated, aligned to your telescope, you can find it fairly easily. But you have to do it using the trick is you're not using the left, right, up, down. You're using the azimuth and altitude adjustments of the tripod to find the moon. Okay, so that relies on your tablet or your device having the correct LMST, having your longitude and latitude correct. There's things that need to be fixed, but yes, you could do that with the moon just as easily because they're both objects. They're easy to find, and frankly, the moon probably would be a little bit safer, but it might be a little bit harder as well. It'd be a lot bit safer. So great question, Cameron. Okay, so going on. So here's a picture of Ross zeroing out the shadow. And so the telescope's right here, and you can tell it's just sort of wonky and oblong looking. And so he's working to get it squared up. And so you can see the shadow and see sort of the idea of what we're talking about, right? And so once we got it close, we took the lens cap off, and Ross stuck his hand back there and saw an image of the sun. I said, okay. So we pulled out a manila file folder, and as you can see, the sun image is oblong, and it's coming out of the bottom of the eyepiece. Okay. So that tells us that we're not.
Well, it looks like that part of the sun is cut off,
right,
down towards that right-hand corner.
Correct, because it's hitting the field stop or the edge of the eyepiece. And so the goal is to use the azimuth and altitude adjustments to get it centered up. Well, you can see that we've overcorrected here because it's now lined up a bit high. So it's just a matter of fiddling with it a little bit. And again, at the end to get it, you're going to end up using some left, right, up, and down unless you just get a really darn good polar alignment. So that's my method of daytime polar alignment right there. Very simple. You're using a projected image of the sun. So if anybody happens to walk up and look through it, so, we're all keeping people away, keeping people back. Don't let little kids get up there. And if you don't need to have the dust cap off, don't remove it. Remove the dust cap only when you need to project.
That's true. Yeah. How high should the sun be in the sky to do this?
I've done it at noon. I've done it in the evening. It hadn't mattered because it's thinking about it at noon would probably not be a good time because you're working straight overhead, and that's a hard place to work with a telescope.
Yeah.
So, in the afternoon, I've typically done it. I've done it early in the day, noon, 1 o'clock before, but the reality is for solar, but later in the afternoon is going to be better because it's easier for mounts to work, not straight overhead.
Mm-hmm.
Be thinking meridian flip. I would not try and do it on either side of solar noon.
Hmm. You know, I did this technique when I was trying to set up for the eclipse in 1991 from Hawaii, and I found that I ran into problems with atmospheric refraction because I was trying to do it too low to the horizon.
So it's just like anything else. You know, the lower you get, the more you can, like the sun, the layers of the sun. When you see a setting sun, and it's all weird shaped.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to affect your ability to get a polar alignment. And I know you and Greg used a different technique, if I can remember correctly, when you were in Casper for
Mm-hmm.
the 2017 eclipse, and you explained it to me. I understood it, but I don't remember what it was. But you know, it's a technique of back and forth and measuring some stuff, and can get a really darn good polar alignment that way as well. Maybe we need to do a segment on that method as
Yeah.
well. You
Well,
know,
one of the other tips I can give, and I probably should show how that's done, is hitting the right latitude. Okay, and the way that you do it, you first off have to start off with a calibrated declination setting circle. Okay, a lot of times the declination, you know, the part that goes from 0 to 90, the north-south direction, it's not really calibrated on amateur telescopes. You know, when they build the scopes, they put it there close, but there's a reason why it's adjustable. Okay, because they're just you know, they don't have a way when they're building the telescopes inside of a building to get this perfect calibration done. There is probably a segment we should do is show how to align the mechanical and optical axis of the telescope. You would do it at night ahead of time. Once you have this calibrated, you loosen up the declination setting circle, move it to 90, and then it's set. What you can do then, okay, what you can do then is in broad daylight, you can point your telescope at 0 degrees. So it's you know, 0 degrees. So the scope is aiming skyward. Okay.
at Polaris.
No. Point the scope at 0 degrees. Okay.
Okay, all right,
0. So, you know, Polaris would be straight out, right? But you're
right.
pointing up at 0 degrees. If you're not at the right latitude, okay. Hold on, let me think about this for a second. It's not 0 degrees. It's you point it at so let's say your latitude is 32 degrees. You point it at 32 degrees, okay? You leave the lens cap on your scope, and you put a bubble level on top of the lens cap. And then what you do is you rotate the axis, the adjustment, the altitude axis of the whole mount, and you adjust it so that the bubble level is now level. Now you're very, very close to your latitude adjustment. So I'll have to show that sometime.
Yeah,
But
we'll do a video
that
on
works
that.
pretty well. That works pretty well. It still leaves, though, how do you get your azimuth adjusted? And I think using Kent's technique with that technique is probably also another way just to get things lined up really well, because these kinds of daylight polar alignments are important, especially if you're at an eclipse and you got to move. Okay, you might have been set up polar aligned for a couple of nights, and now the clouds are rolling in, and everybody says, "Okay, load it up, get in the car, we're driving
To Arkansas.
as far as we can, okay, to get out of these clouds." And you arrive, and you got 30 minutes to set up, okay. And so knowing how to do this daytime polar alignment can come in very, very handy. So, yeah.
Yep. This technique, after you do it a couple of times, 5 minutes. It's dead simple. The more precise you are, the more precise you're going to be. But by golly, it's far better than just plunking it down on the ground and hoping for the best, and just holding your thumb up in the wind and going, "Yep, that's north," and going on down the road. So,
Right.
why don't you do some shout outs to some of the people we have? Scott, looks like we've got couple of new
Well,
people.
you got a lot of people that were logging in today and watching. So we have Richard Grace logged on first. Then we have Jeff Wise telling everybody hello. Beatrice Hines, who's tuning in, which is great. Mike Wiesner, I'll say it again. He says it's my favorite online show, so thank you very much. And Beatrice saying mine too. Thank you very much. Andrew Corkill is on. Chalk Star out of England. Hello, everybody. That's Shailendra Sharma.
Hey, Chalks.
Yeah. Harold Locke. I only have one other favorite show, and that's the new Kung Fu show. I like Kung Fu too, but I remember the 1970s program.
David Carradine, right?
That's right.
Yep.
He was always barefoot and, always open up a whole can of whoop ass. So that's right.
Can you say that on network television?
Whoop ass, you can. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, they let you say that. No, that's the great thing about it being on online programming. I don't have the same, but I keep it pretty clean.
Yeah.
Right. Caesar Brolo's on watching us. Says hello, everybody. Caesar, how's it going down there in Buenos Aires? Cameron Gillis is watching. And Andrew says, Scott is teaching us astronomy, Kung Fu. Kent just gave you like the most outrageous daytime polar alignment Kung Fu there is. So there you go. It's like, what? I think the real Kung Fu masters don't scream a lot.
They make other people
silent,
scream
and then they just knock you out. So.
They make other people scream a lot.
They make them scream a lot. They grab like your little pinky and drive you right to the ground. Mike Wiesner, he's wanting to know if we're getting the Explore Scientific private plane charter ready. I wanted to know if he'd fly it. He only flies T-38, so that's, max 2 people. It's like a sports car, So
he did say he'd put me in the carrier pod though, so I'm game for that.
Oh, okay, you'll do that. All right, that's cool. Caesar Brola says we're making something special when we are trying here with a 5-inch FirstLight Mac and an IXS 100. Very cool, Caesar.
Video. We want to see video of it.
Video, Caesar. Pictures. That's right.
Absolutely.
Jeff Wise says my days revolve around these shows. My gosh. Okay. Well, that's wonderful. Harold Locke. Harold Locke says I share to my friends and the RASC ALS Rascals, of which I'm a member. I tried to beat Kareem. Thank you, Harold. Yeah. And who else? Ken Noble's here with us. He wants to know how far is the dwarf planet. I don't know. It's on. You'll find it on the Spitzer website. And
looks like we have Tariq Abdullah from, I think he's in Saudi Arabia, somewhere over there. Hello, Tariq. I see you on some of the Facebook groups. It's good to see you.
Lamenting that it's expensive and a little tough to get to dark sky sites out there. But we certainly, you can do so much astronomy from home. One of the things that I was, I've been getting some physical therapy because I had some sciatic nerve pain, which is largely gone right now, thanks to some great physical therapy. But I was talking to my physical therapist, and she was asking me how to get started in astronomy. And basically, I recommended to her that she starts with the naked eye and just goes into her own backyard. Now, one of the things that you can do is maybe you can look along your fence line. So you stand in the same spot, the same exact spot every morning or every third morning or one morning a week, but, in regular intervals. And then you see where the sun's coming up, and then you put like maybe a chalk mark, okay, where it's coming up on your fence line, and you can
cool.
Start to measure now, how the sun appears to change as it's rising over the year, okay? And really what you're measuring is our orbit around the sun. So
That's cool. You could make your own horizon lines on your fence.
yeah,
Put
why
up
not?
put
Yeah,
up
you
a
don't need.
post for
Yeah, she
the
was wondering what kind of big telescope she needs and stuff. And I said, that those are gradual steps. I said, the next thing you'll do, I said, that will make you start to look at the sky more often, and that's really the first baby steps to becoming an astronomer, is doing something like that where you're compelled to look up. Okay. This is why Jack Horkheimer, his tagline was keep looking up, because when you do keep looking up, you see things like, if you're driving down the road, you're using not only your peripheral vision to watch for animals on the side of the road or something, but your peripheral vision of up as well. And I have seen incredible bolides, and I've seen a lot of cool stuff only because I do that, and I'm constantly reminded that, we're flying through space on this pale blue dot, and it's not just something that you talk about or you conceptualize or something like that. You start to experience it. And so that's, and then you get your windows on the universe. You start off with binoculars, and start to learn the constellations and some nice charts. And then you get a bigger window in the universe and you get your telescope,
Scott, I'm just sitting here envisioning using a fence to make a calendar.
Yeah. Oh,
You could-
absolutely.
absolutely. So you could do the
You could
solstices.
you could make a hinge in your backyard,
With your east fence.
with poles, wood
Yeah.
poles,
Yeah. Or just like you said, if you have a fence that runs north-south, you stand at a point when sun rises on the solstice, you mark it, you walk over there and you just put up like a steel rod. You do it on both of the solstices and the equinox.
Yeah.
And then on the first day of every month, you
Yeah.
put in a different pin and you could create a calendar on your fence.
Absolutely.
Dude,
Absolutely.
that's
Yeah,
awesome.
why wouldn't you make your own calendar,
It's sort of I guess it's a sundial of sorts, but it's a sun
Well, that's the next
calendar.
thing to do. Make a sundial,
Sundial,
start to
yeah.
figure out where these seasons come into play.
Yeah.
And wood sticks or poles or, these things cheap,
Yeah, that's awesome.
cheap.
So,
Yeah.
Tariq just said he's from UAE.
Okay.
Not Saudi Arabia. So sorry
Yeah,
about that,
I have a
Tariq.
friend
couldn't
working
remember.
over there at a nuclear power plant in the UAE. So he loves it.
So I'm going to look up the UAE real quick, and we're going to see how
Yep.
bad their light pollution is.
It's
So,
pretty significant.
Yeah, it is. That's
But you got our closest star, which is the sun, and they get lots of it there. So,
yeah. So here we go. All right.
but look
This
how,
is-
once you get out of that, look how dark it gets.
Yeah. Of course, you're going to have to go into Saudi Arabia, across the border, but light pollution is a measure of two things: wealth and population density.
Yeah.
North Korea has a lot of population, but they don't have a lot of wealth, and therefore there's not a whole lot of lights on at night. It was like Afghanistan up until the last 15 years. Afghanistan was one of the darkest large regions with population on Earth, but it's beginning to get so. But yeah, there is some really dark out here. I think they call this the empty quarter. That is just dark, dark, dark. But you can see right there.
There's a road going through it.
I'd have to look up what that is, but obviously there's something going on right there. So this has, out here in the middle of nowhere, it has a border class 1 with an SQM meter of 22, which is dead dark.
Yeah.
No lights.
That's
But-
dark. It'd be fun to go there just to experience that.
Yeah, and look at the scale over here. That's 500 kilometers. So
Yeah. I'm sure that is a challenging trip. Maybe at times, just because of the distance and everything.
yeah.
It doesn't look like there's a bunch of towns out there.
No, I think there's
Hopefully you got a full tank of gas.
I think there's two things out there: wind and sand.
Wind and sand and sun.
And sun for sure.
Yeah, and stars.
Like I said, here's Afghanistan, big and dark, but not nearly the size of, Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so thought that'd be interesting to share. Thanks for coming, Tariq.
Yeah.
I love doing geography as well, And so looking up places and seeing the light pollution they face.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
That
let's see, Cameron Gillis says he uses landmarks like trees, buildings for his sundial.
Yeah. So Tariq said, yes, it is called the empty quarter.
Yep.
Yep. So.
Well, so are you now spent? Have you done your?
I have done my duty for the day.
He did his duty. He did. He was out there doing his photography and stuff. And so
we
yeah,
did it.
We actually, we not only do these shows, but we actually run a telescope company too. So yeah. But this does for us. It's important to do these programs because it keeps us really in touch every day with our community and the idea that we're not just selling boxes of stuff, right? So this is where I remind our staff often that we are outfitters, for people who are exploring, and we do not only astronomy, but we do microscopy. We have people who are involved in exploring nature, like hiking and camping, that kind of stuff. And we had a little conversation today about some of the new weather instruments as we're getting into that. And I think weather is, again, just a really amazing thing to explore. So
we do have a weather Facebook page.
Yes, we do. Yeah, it's called Explore Weather. It's a user group. That's true.
Right.
That's true.
That we see,
and we have pretty knowledgeable meteorologists on it. One of them is Charles Peak, who is really kind of the traveling weather guy for the Weather Channel. Okay, so if you watch Weather Channel a lot, you would have heard from Charles Peak at one time or another. He's one of the principals on that group,
and seen his video and pictures a lot.
Yeah.
He was their first drone guy. So a lot of their drone footage of storms comes from him.
From him, yeah,
Right.
Yeah. And plus, he's also into amateur astronomy as well. So, Rachel Davis, I am just north of Atlanta, and I really struggle with light pollution. So, I have been to the Peach State Stargaze, which is, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours going east of Atlanta, and anytime you're living in a big city, you can pretty much count on that you got about a 2 to 3 hour drive to start to get to dark skies.
Atlanta is huge. Suburban Atlanta takes up like 20 counties and spills over into 3 states. It's just astounding how big the metro area of Atlanta is.
Yeah. Now, most of us love deep, dark skies. We love great seeing conditions and stuff. And we lament when we see a lot of light pollution and stuff. But even with a ton of light pollution, with maximum light pollution, okay, you can still do astronomy. You can do solar astronomy. You can do lunar astronomy, bright stars, some double stars, planets. You could fill your whole life doing nothing but those. I mean, just pick one, and you could spend your whole life studying the universe in one object. So because the whole universe is contained in everything, so
in one object, the universe.
In one object. Yes, that's right. So, but I think that like most of us, I do get I think a huge mental health benefit and I think a physical health benefit from being out in that sanctuary of a deep, dark sky, so.
And you haven't even opened the door with astrophotography. With the miracle of narrowband filtering, I know people that live in New York City, like the Bronx and Brooklyn, who do astrophotography.
Oh, Singapore, in the middle of Singapore.
Well, Cesar Brolo.
Buenos Aires. I mean, there's a very
on his balcony.
Yeah.
On his balcony, and he only has a very narrow window,
That's
but
right.
he does some amazing work. And it's just you make do with the circumstances you have at the time, and you do astrophotography, narrow band, and it's amazing. Plate solving, is alchemy. You know, it's dark, it's black magic. It's astounding how that gives you the ability to find targets and take pictures of them. It's awesome. So,
Yeah. Well, that's great. So Rachel Davis is saying that they have a boat on Lake Tanier, I think is how it's spelled. Tanier.
Linear,
And the sky is so much better just 20 miles further north. So there is a good spot at the marina. That's true. That's true.
you find your spots and you covet them, and you try and keep the lights down. There's nothing you can do. You know, and I'm just going to give my dark sky speech. Each one of you can affect a change.
That's true.
Pekka, who I don't think is with us today or hadn't mentioned him yet. Pekka has affected change in Stockholm, Sweden, and he's starting
at the government level.
At the government level.
Yeah.
And one person, you know, so don't feel like you can't do anything. You know, it's think globally, act locally. You know, I have a Boy Scout friend I haven't seen in 40 years, turns out is involved with a government agency that I'm talking to him about statewide issues of light pollution. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you plant seeds, you're a gardener. You just keep planting seeds, and eventually one of them might grow and turn into something that affects a change. But look at your own house. If you have lights shining up in the sky, commit to going and buying new fixtures and replacing them.
Exactly.
And act locally. Worry about your house first. Yep. And then that gives you the ability to show your neighbors, look, you can see my front porch, but because you have a bright light shining light out into the street, mm-hmm. Nobody else can. I could be standing at your front door, nobody can see it because of that light. But because I have a shielded light, look at the difference. It's not about no light, which is what people immediately think. It's about the right amount of light in the right location at the right time.
That's right.
That's what this is about. It's not about no lighting. It's about those three right kinds of lighting. And ultimately, no light shining up. There's no reason to shine lights up, because if you do, you're wasting half of the electricity that light fixture produces. So, you know, everybody here, go commit to do something.
Yeah, be the good example. You know, right off the top, we know what we need to do. So, mm-hmm. And we should make it the best that we can do by ourselves. And then you kind of have a platform to say, look, this is what I'm doing to be a good steward of using light. You know, so there's some interesting comments here. Let's see. Harold Locke says, I've been using binos. I see a lot of stars, and I swear that the Milky Way can just barely be seen here. North San Diego, where the coastal haze is thin. Tarek says, Harold, when I use my bino or telescope, I see thousands of stars I can't see with my naked eyes. That's right. You know, so more aperture, you know, that's another myth. Okay. Some people think that they should not, if they live in the city, they should not get a big telescope. They say it's wasted on, but that's not true. I used to live in North San Diego County, and you know, we have a lot of light pollution out there. I had a friend who owned a 16-inch telescope. I then got a 13-inch telescope, and from my backyard, I could still. I mean, it wasn't bright like it was out in the desert, but I could still make out many galaxies and deep sky objects. You know, and so you have to become a good observer. The other thing about doing astronomy in your backyard often, okay, is that it keeps your skill set up of setting up, tearing down, polar aligning. You know, somebody brought up plate solving. All those things you can do, focusing for astrophotography. Then when you get to that dark sky site, you're dialed in. You know what to do, okay? It's muscle memory at that point.
Scott, you said backyard. I've become somewhat of an advocate for front yard, because especially if you're in a Walker neighborhood, it lets people go, hey, would you like to look at the Jupiter It's
Outreach.
outreach. It's
That's right.
It's
Well,
instantaneous
that's the
outreach.
convincer for your neighbors to do better lighting
And
control.
the other thing is, this is a wonderful example. There was two guys on the PMC8 users group on Groups.io,
Yeah.
and a guy posted a question, and he said something about where he lived, and he said the city where he lived, and this other guy chimes in and goes, "You live in I live in this place." And he's like, "Well, yeah, I live, in this area of town." He's like,
Oh, they were living like really close to each other, right?
5 houses apart. They both had Exos 2 GTs with PMC8.
Oh, wow. There we go.
One had an Explorer Scientific, I think it was a 127, and the other one had an ED80. They lived 5 houses apart. They'd been doing astronomy for a couple of years. They did not know it, but they sort of knew each other in passing, because in this day and age, you don't know your neighbors like you did when we were growing up. But literally 5 doors away was a guy doing the same thing every clear night, just like this other guy was. And they were completely invisible with each other. So, if you want people to know about your hobby, you have to let people see you doing your hobby. And that may mean setting out in your front yard and letting people see you go do telescope. So,
That's true.
Anyway,
Gary Burton had a question. Are there any good filters that can help reduce the effect of light pollution through your telescope when taking photographs? Gary, there's lots out there. In general, what you're going to look for are narrow band filters, and so that's the deal. So
by narrow band, you're taking the entire spectrum of visible or invisible light, say infrared, and you're cutting out all of the light except a very, very, very thin slice, 5, 10, 15, 20, 50 nanometers, very narrow. And what that does is that cuts out the light that caused by light pollution. And so you're able to filter out and use typically H alpha, hydrogen alpha, triple ionized oxygen, double ionized sulfur, and then artificially assign those red, blue, and green colors, and create a red, blue, green image. So a false color image, but that's why photography is they don't really look like that, except in shape, but it allows us to see things that would otherwise be invisible, especially in the infrared, which brings the sky alive when you start getting that infrared, that far, far red. And and I know, Gary, that, it's like taking a time exposure with a camera. Your eye can't do that. Your eye just processes it, I think, 1/60th of a second, effectively. No, slower than that, because you can't see the lights flash, 1/30th of a second. And, the camera builds up that time over the light over time, allows us to really create images that are beautiful. And each person processes that data differently and creates their own individual piece of art. Gary, you and I could get the same data set and we'll come up with the same stuff. And I worked with Gary at the newspaper. It's just like two people using Photoshop on the same photo. We're going to come up with different images at the end of the processing run. So, yep.
I'm going to give a shout out to Cameron Gillis. Cameron does a program each week called Camstronomy, and he he is in a very light compromised area as well, and he's shooting just from his balcony. Pekka Haltala, who's on our programming sometimes, also in Sweden, shooting from his balcony. He made like light blocking shades. He worked with his local neighborhood to make his neighborhood darker. So we were talking about him earlier. But Cameron shows people how they can use really some of the least expensive equipment. And he's doing a sky survey from his patio. Okay,
I thought we were going to use a BB gun to shoot out the lights. That's very inexpensive to deal with light pollution.
Yeah. Could land you in jail.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. That's right. So, but there's ways to, leverage what's around you and how you're using things to make it work. Certainly these filters are a great way to go, but the narrowband filters are not cheap. you can drop easily $1,000 or more on narrowband filters. In fact, a lot more. So, but it's I can't recommend more for astronomers to start where they are. Okay, we have people that are in very cloudy environments. The UK, cloudy, I don't know, the majority of the time. Germany has been like that as well. Arkansas has been like that, so there's places where we'd love to go, but waiting until you have optimum viewing conditions or that you can travel out to do these things, that is going to make you a sometime astronomer, okay? When you could be doing astronomy literally every day. So even when it's cloudy somehow, if you get a shadow, and see what's happening with the shadow, you're doing astronomy. So,
don't let the quest for perfection get in the way of starting. I have people call in.
That's a big piece of wisdom right there.
And they've had their telescope and a go-to system for a month or two, and I'm like, well, have you gone out and just looked at the moon or Saturn? And they're like, well, no, because I want this and this and this. I'm like, going,
why?
No, just go use your telescope. Go look at something.
Yep.
Well, and they get so caught up in this quest for perfection. And there's a book out there, Don't Let Good Enough Get in the Way of Perfection. Okay, right. But that quest for having it mastered before you ever start is like being a bass fisherman and saying, I'm not going to go fishing until I know that I can catch a fish.
And not just any fish, but like a
black bass,
nice fish,
a 5-pound black bass, exactly. On my first cast.
Yeah. Otherwise, I'm not fishing. Nah.
Otherwise, I'm not going to go fishing. Okay, then sell your bass boat. And by the way, people talk about how expensive astronomy is. I've said this before on this broadcast and others. I know people with $30,000 bass boats and $50,000 pickup trucks.
Yep.
And they go bass fishing and they let go what they catch. They're black bass fishermen. They don't keep what they catch. So they've got $80,000 wrapped up in it. They have to go to the lake every time. They got to fill up their boat. They got to fill up their truck, and they've got to put lures in their tackle box, and they have to have pumpkin colored when the water's this and green for that. And they got to be 6 inches longer, 2 inches long. And, they have literally thousands of dollars wrapped up in lures that they can lose on the first cast. And people say astronomy is an expensive hobby.
Astronomy is a very, very inexpensive hobby.
Very inexpensive. It may not be as inexpensive as, say, cross stitch, where you buy, a little thread and a little thing and you start cross stitching. Right. But, hiking is a hobby. And if you just hike around your town or your city parks, that's inexpensive. But on the realm of hobbies that cost money, not that bad. There are by far more expensive hobbies out there. So anyway, Chris Larson. Chris Larson is a tournament bass fisherman, and he says it's an excellent analogy. Thank you, Chris, for that confirmation of that.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Any other questions from our group here? Oh, geez, my knife making hobby is around 20 grand. Okay.
Well, yeah, because if he has his own forge and has to buy his own base metals and then layer them, and that can sharpening devices.
The thing that's important about a hobby is, and I think most people should have some sort of something that they can occupy their mind with. There's been lots of studies on aging and the problems of remembering, memory and these kinds of things, and having a hobby and something that's, even if it's doing word puzzles, okay, occupying your mind, learning something new all the time, challenging yourself. These things are very, very helpful. And, they help you, with your health, with your blood pressure, with, lots of things. So definitely recommend a hobby to anyone. And if you're only going to spend $20,000, aren't you worth it? Aren't you worth spending $20,000 on yourself? So I think so. I think so.
Buy food, buy medicine, buy shelter, buy
But
telescopes.
take care of yourself. Take care of your family.
Buy telescopes. That's what you're saying, right, Scott?
And then buy a telescope.
Four priorities in life: family, health, shelter, telescopes. That sounds somebody.
And Richard Gray says buy a dome. Oh yeah, you need a dome. That's
you can
right.
live in the dome, so you can replace. Although the
You can
kids
live in a dome, right?
yeah, so
right.
somebody can turn that into a pretty good cartoon or meme. So
Caesar Brolo says I used to have. I had. I don't know if he still does or not, but a marine aquarium. That is really expensive. Yes. And Terex says just sell everything and buy telescopes.
Harold Block's talking about blue light. He has blue light burning in his eyes.
Oh yeah.
You don't realize how much blue light and the effect it has on you.
Yeah, they say it's horrible for you.
It's
actually.
horrible. It keeps you awake. And my 19-year-old son does online gaming and makes some money at it, frankly. And he's got this LED light thing around to light him up, and he likes the blue the best. And I'm like, well, that's why you can't go to sleep, because that blue light keeps you awake.
Yeah.
And it forces you to stay awake. And if you're on your phone before going to bed and you don't have the red light function turned on, the night shift, then that blue light is stimulating and ruining your circadian rhythm and making it harder for you to go to sleep. If you've got bright white LEDs in your bedroom or in your house that are on, those bright white light LEDs, 3000 K and above, are flooding blue light.
They're bad.
And they're bad. 2800, under 3000, but really
bad for you. It's bad for your dog. It's bad for your cat. It's bad for your kids, your wife, your friends.
Yep. So, and people love those bright white lights because they're bright and they're white. And it makes they'll help keep the boogeyman away at night because, I've lit up the yard so I can see
That's
the
the
moths
boogeyman know
out.
exactly where you are and where your valuables are.
That's exactly right.
Yep. Let's see. Andrew Corkill wants to know, he wants a 20-inch Explore Scientific Dobsonian, but he wants to know, can he hide it from his wife?
No.
I don't think so.
A 20?
No. Nah, you can't hide that.
Can't hide that. Well, unless you have a lake house that she never goes to.
Yeah. A lot of people's spouses, though, that are not into this, okay, they eventually come around because they see how much joy it gives. Why wouldn't you want your spouse happy? That's why you married them, right? You want them to be happy. So.
And we just have to remember that works the other direction too.
Well, that's true.
Everybody knows about telescopes. We better be buying diamond rings or chocolate or whatever it is that makes mama happy. Because, fellas, we all know where our bread gets buttered.
Yes.
Yes.
That's right.
Chris
wives
Larson,
too. Wives too. They know where they're. That's right.
Chris Larson says he takes a Dob to the fishing tournaments because, these things kick off at FirstLight or, before. He says he's introducing astronomy to a lot of interesting characters. So sitting around waiting at the boat ramp before you ever get in the boat to launch, it's a great way. That's an interesting, unique way to do outreach right there. That's an awesome way.
That's right. Beatrice Hines says, I'd rather spend money on astronomy gear than throwing out money on cigarettes, alcoholic beverage, and pubs.
Yep.
Yeah, actually, astronomy is good for you. If you're spending your money there, you can't do those other things so much, so I like that. Let's see. Chris Larson, did you read this one? I've brought my 5-inch Dob to tournaments.
Bass tournaments, right?
Bass tournaments. That's cool. Great observing when you get to the ramp early, and I'm getting some usual characters interested in astronomy. Very cool. And Cameron says, I'm still working on convincing my wife to poke a hole in our roof to build my dream observatory. Yeah, why not?
Man cave in the backyard. Don't.
It's
I
just
mean,
a hole. I mean, it's not like you're going to take the roof off the house, right?
12 feet in diameter? Not a problem. It's the garage,
Or
basically.
less. I had
Yeah.
a friend, his name is Egon. Egon sometimes watches this program.
You got Rich.
And I remember when I first met him, he takes me into his house. You know, we have dinner and he introduces me to his family and stuff. He takes me into his house and then we go up, you know, a lot of times you have like those attic stairs that come down, you know, so we go up there and we go up into the attic and he had cut it was about a 3 foot by 3 foot square hole in his roof. And then he put a panel over it that was to keep the rain out, you know?
He made a slide off observatory on
It
the
was
peak
like
of
a
his house.
flip off thing like that. The tripod and the mount just came right up to that point where it could cover it. And then he would just pop his telescope up on top of that. Now, you know, did he get heat waves from the rooftop? Yeah, but he was out every night, every clear night. Everything's all polar aligned. It's ready to go. But my hero about this is this guy, and I wish I remembered his name. He was on a Global Star Party when Christopher Go was on, and this guy was doing narrowband imaging in Singapore from inside his condo.
That's right. I remember that. Through the
Remember that?
window.
He had like a 2 foot by 2 foot window that he's shooting outside of, and so it polar aligned his mount in the room. The polar axle was almost hitting the wall. Okay. So he just had enough clearance so that his counterweight wouldn't scrape the wall. And the telescope was aiming out this one little part, and he would shoot as long as he could shoot through that 3 foot square or whatever that was. Incredible, incredible deep sky astrophotography with narrowband.
In a window.
Can't be any more challenging than that.
A normal room-sized window.
Yes.
And you have to exploit the targets of opportunity. Whatever's there is the only thing you can shoot. And he managed to polar align, probably using the drift method over a course of a couple of nights.
Probably.
And had a polar alignment. And, you know, that's wanting to do it. So many people want instant gratification, expect go-to mounts like the Exos 100 or the PMC8, the Exos 2 with PMC8, to have an easy button. You know, well, I can't do a polar alignment because I can't see the.
Yeah, but it's not even an easy button. You're just putting up obstacle after obstacle in front of you to keep you from exploring your universe.
Right. Going and just starting.
Just start.
Again, it's that quest for perfection.
Yeah.
Want everything right, just right, before I ever go look at something.
Right.
Just go.
But if you saw the images,
look.
you would be utterly blown away that he did these images through a window, you know, from Singapore, you know. So
Singapore is probably right there with the top 30 most light polluted places on
it
Earth.
is very light polluted. Very, very. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. And often bad weather. So, but you know, his telescope's always high and dry, and so that's right.
So Egon. So does Egon still have the flip-off attic observatory?
I don't know. He moved, but and Egon did get away from astronomy for a little while. He has now made a complete loop back. I think part of the reinforcement of that was he came to the first Arizona Dark Sky Star Party. So you met him.
I met him there. That's correct.
Right? You remember he had like, what did he have? Like, it wasn't a bean bag. It was something he was laying down on, and
Yeah, just chilling
he had
out.
his binoculars.
You know, okay, so let's think about that. You market it as a hole in your roof. I mean, when you go to sell your house,
Yeah.
you got to explain why there's this 4x4 hole in your roof.
Well, it was a sun. It had like a sun panel, so you could put, I guess, you could rebuild it so that you have a sunlight tunnel, you know, coming into, you know,
your house, or just take it off and have a roofer and framer come back and plug the hole and go on down the road.
It's true.
But, yeah, it would either be a selling point or a detriment, one or the other. You market it as
You got to plan it out. You got to
Yeah.
think about, okay, one day I might sell this house and move. how am I going to fix that? But yeah, he had it up there, and that allowed him to, sometimes he'd wake up in the middle of the night, and when he did, he would go up on his attic and he would do his astronomy. So
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, he had it was kind of like a beanbag that he was laying down on, and he was using his binoculars, and he was just having a great time. And it was nice to see Egon back in his element, because he was like a big, he was just, you could see the kid coming out in him again, and we, Karshner Caverns is a dark sky park, and we were seeing a great.
It was beautiful.
It was nice.
Beautiful.
Yep. So
we had 4 wonderful nights in a row. Normally, you go to a star party, you're happy if you get one night. We had 4 spectacular
4 out of
nights
4.
in a row. Yeah, 4
That's
to 4.
right.
It was a home run. So I guess we just blew Chris Larson's mind. OMG, a beanbag for star parties.
I know. Yep. Okay, Trex says, Scott, I got a question. Does an ES 0.7x reducer work with different refractors from another brands and different aperture, like the 90 or 70? Tarek, what I can tell you is that flat field reducers are designed for an F ratio of a telescope. So if you got, that 0.7 is optimized to work between about F5 up to about F7, maybe even past F7.
Ours is designed. The field flattener focal reducer, the 0.7x that we sell, was designed for an F8 system. It works on F7.5, like our.
It works on faster
127-minute telescopes.
Yep.
If you're using a crop sensor, it will work on faster telescopes. But if you're trying to use it with a full frame camera on a f5.5, it's not going to work, because it's just not going to create a flat field at that point. It's outside the parameters. I have know people using f5.5s and f6s. They're using a crop sensor and they're having good success with it.
Yeah.
They played with the spacing a little bit, and over the course of nights, really fine-tuned it with 1 millimeter rings to get it exactly where it was optimized for their telescope.
Yeah. Let's see. Lubo in China says, you can fight all the obstacles except the storage of telescopes. When the only thing available from Explore Scientific costs $11,000, I can only sigh. Well, Lubo, we have telescopes that cost less than $11,000. But, and we have small telescopes too. But, we're not the only telescope manufacturer around. And this show is not just about selling Explore Scientific gear. Okay, this show is really about helping you learn more about astronomy and supporting the whole community. And that's really what we're about. Explore Scientific as a business has its own marketing and has all that other stuff. And we do our job. And we try to do it very well, but we're not the only game in town, and we're not the only good telescope game in town. There's lots of great telescopes out there. So, I respect the whole industry, and I'm glad that we're a player in it. So
where can you tell where he's located?
He says Lubo in China. I assume he's in China.
Look, Lubo, send me an email at Explore Alliance at explorescientific.com. Scott, share that, would you please?
Yeah, he says a shortage of telescopes. Now,
okay.
Lubo, that's true. This shortage of telescopes is temporary. It's frustrating. It's frustrating to us, and it's frustrating to the whole industry. The pandemic itself drove a lot of people to become interested in astronomy. Once they got even a little taste of it in their backyards, they bought telescopes like crazy. We never experienced anything like it. And neither did all of our competitors, okay? All the competitors, everyone selling telescopes in the industry sold them all pretty much. And so
we sold every telescope we have.
Every telescope, every mount, most of our eyepieces, it was crazy. We sold about 1.5 years of inventory in about 4 months. And so that was, that was something you could not predict. And telescopes of all kinds, toy telescopes, this apple that's behind me, even, I have my, I have my little toy telescope from when I was a kid right here.
His Kmart telescope.
It is my Kmart telescope.
This telescope is the reason Scott is sitting here today.
That's right. Here's my 40 millimeter refractor. I saw the craters on the moon for the first time with this telescope. Okay. And it cost my parents $17.50. Okay. I love it. It represents the whole life of exploration for me. And, but even those telescopes right there are built by hand. Every telescope is built by hand. And it's a small industry. So the whole worldwide industry is something like 350 million US dollars a year worldwide.
There'll be a bubble because of 2020.
Oh, that's
it'll
true.
Skyrocket, but it's going to go back to 350 or 60 million dollars.
400 million or whatever it is, but it's never going to be a multi-billion-dollar business. You don't see a bunch of telescope millionaires running around. I'm not a telescope millionaire. Okay. So I feel in one way very rich because I work in an industry that I love and I come to a job that I love. Okay. And that's awesome. You can't buy that. So that's the deal.
The factories aren't set up to produce a whole bunch of different lines at once. So the capacity doesn't exist. When I'm sold out of all 12 of my high-end telescopes and all 23 varieties of our FirstLight telescopes and all of our finder scopes and all of our polar axis and eyepieces, we can't produce all of those things at the same time.
Right.
And so
I've had people come up to me and say, well, hire more people, get them going. Okay. Guess what, folks? You do not want inexperienced people polishing your optics. Okay. You want very experienced people doing that. Okay. Because it's a precision thing. And, all of those optics, including toy telescopes, even those optics are polished to a fraction of a wavelength of light. Okay. So, it's not an automatic thing. No one wants to buy enough telescopes to put automated machinery. That could be done, but you would spend more money on automated machinery and would never recoup the expense of putting that kind of machinery in. So it will remain probably for a very, very, very long time a handmade instrument. The more skilled that person is, the better those optics are. So.
And Scott, it's like binoculars. You've told me that one of the highest paid employees in an optics factory is the person or people who collimate the binoculars, because you don't just walk in and start collimating binoculars. It's a skill that you learn over years and years of working your way into that position. And those people have value. Scott, you've told the story of trying to put an eyepiece together and the ladies on the line laughed at you in Chinese.
Oh yeah. I worked all day trying to build an eyepiece, and I've been around optics for a long time. Okay. I'm at an air scrubbing table. I'm masked up. I've got all the stuff on and everything. And I'm thinking, I know which way these optics go in. I know the technique. I can do it. I could not pass quality assurance myself, okay? Because I did not have enough time in building hundreds or thousands of eyepieces myself.
But all you're doing, Scott, is just putting little pieces of glass in a tube.
It is hard.
Slapping it in and
really,
going,
really
there.
Tough.
It's an eyepiece. Really tough.
Yeah. So, you can assemble it. You can look through it. It'll make it a sharp image. But to get all the cosmetics that amateur astronomers want, that's one of the differences between amateur astronomers and professional astronomers. Pros don't care about the cosmetics of the telescope. They could care less, okay? If I took you to the Palomar 200-inch telescope, at a distance, this telescope is beautiful. Okay. You get up close, you shine a flashlight on the mirror. It looks like, San Diego skateboarding pros had landed on the mirror and ran all over that mirror.
So,
But the images that the 200-inch can produce are mind-blowing, so.
Ross took home an ED80 last night that he shot pictures with, and beautiful pictures last night. Got some great work. The lens has a crack in it. Doesn't affect it at all.
Nope.
Completely. And I mean, it's
well,
not. It's not like
we
a
talked about the bullet hole ridden,
yeah.
telescope at McDonald Observatory.
You know, it's not like the scar I got right there from getting hit with a baseball umpiring. But you hold it just right in the glass, and you're like going, this thing's got a scallop out of the edge. It's probably almost the size of a dime in one of the lenses, one of the elements. It doesn't affect it at all. It's a perfectly workable telescope, but you sell that, and it's going to come back, and people are going to freak out, and so we're not going to sell it. But it's a great telescope, but never gets sold.
Well, we digress a little bit, but we're happy that you guys are enjoying the program. We thank you for your questions. I think there was one last question here about an ED80 telescope. Someone here was looking for a carbon fiber ED80. We don't have any used or new at this time, so that we will in the future, but right now it's just out of stock.
The ED80 was discontinued in 2018, right after I started here.
The carbon fiber one.
The carbon fiber ED80, it's a TED80 or TED0806 is the SKU on it, and we've got plans in the works to introduce that at some point, but we've got to get caught up on everything else before the cat factory begins to have capacity to start producing something new. So that's where we are.
Tarek had a question here. He says, so the APS-C sensor and F6 scope doesn't work with the 0.7 reducer?
There are people who are doing it successfully, and they're happy. I think it becomes potentially the user's expectations.
Yeah.
I know some people like coma on a fast Newtonian does not bother me a bit visually because I don't use the edges. But yet some people look at a fast Newtonian and they have to go by the coma corrector, and God bless them for buying the coma corrector. So they have to use the coma corrector for visual astronomy, whereas really it's designed for astrophotography. But
that's right, because your eyeball's not flat, folks.
Right. So it becomes
not like a sensor.
It becomes your expectation of what working is, and people think a field flattener produces a perfectly flat field. It does not, or at least at the commercial amateur level. Certainly, NASA could probably pay for a field flattener or somebody with an unlimited budget that makes a perfectly flat field
for that particular instrument.
This telescope,
right,
and this camera, and they could achieve a perfectly flat field, but it's going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars to do that. So flat becomes what's flat is a curve like this flat.
Let's just say this: it's flatter. It's flatter than it would be.
It's a field flatterer, right? Or something.
And Tarek, I tried to answer this question before, but you had a question: does the 0.7 focal reducer from Explore Scientific work with other brands and other types of refractors? Short answer: yes. Again, it's an F ratio thing. It's a spacing thing. You may have to adjust things, as far as spacing goes, and you may have to have limits on how big of a chip you're going to use. But will it work? Yes, it will work. I know that it's tough when you have to buy something and then test it yourself and check it. You'd like to know the exact right answer before you ever do that. But it's impossible, Tarek, it's impossible for us to check our equipment on every other brand of telescopes. We just don't do that. So probably the best thing for you to do is to get on cloudy nights. And, amateur astronomers are famous for loaning out their gear to other people in their astronomy clubs, and they will try all kinds of different combinations of things, and you might get a great answer that way. So,
Tarek, if there's not an astronomy club in the UAE, you can't be the only astronomer
oh, I know.
in the UAE.
Yeah.
You need to start an astronomy club over there. And then join the Astronomical League, or join the Astronomical League now as a member at large.
Dubai Astronomy Group. There is the Al Sadim Astronomy Group and Observatory in the UAE. Abu Dhabi has an astronomy group out there. There's plenty. There really is.
Yeah. So,
but there's also the Explorer Alliance, and we're right here live with you. And we're happy to answer all the questions that we have, or to share those. So, and don't forget, we have global star parties too. So you can actually take, even if you're locked down, even if you are unable to travel, or if you're even, if you're a disabled person, you can join Global Star Party and actually be in an astronomy experience. It's live. Seen by other astronomers all over the world. So our next one will be next Tuesday, which is the anniversary of the Apollo moon landing, July 20th. And our special guest host is Goddard Space Flight Center's Caitlin Ahrens. And Caitlin is bringing on some really amazing people. We've got Seth Shostak he's the senior astronomer from SETI. He's going to be on. We've got, of course, David Levy will be on. Dave Eicher from Astronomy Magazine will be on. We have a Caltech scientist that will be on. We have a PhD candidate who's studying the moon will be on. Okay, so it is going to be a lot about the moon itself, our journey to go and colonize the moon and eventually onto Mars. But I expect that we will have some astrophotographers taking live views of the moon. I'm sure Caesar will be on. We will have some moon that night. So hopefully we get some views from northern and southern hemisphere, and maybe even from Europe to the Americas, with views of the moon and just to share the astronomy experience. So
Scott, what time is that going to start at?
We're starting earlier than we had been. I pushed Global Star Parties to start at 8 p.m. Central. This one is going to start at 7 p.m. Central because we've got a lot of ground to cover. And I probably will continue after that because we have Global Star Party every week. So probably we'll keep it at 7 o'clock until we get more towards the winter time, and then I'll push it back to 6. So we got some more observing time, and we don't have to be up quite as late. We were up till I think Cameron Gillis and Caesar and Maxie and I were up until almost 2 a.m. Central. So that would have put it at 4 o'clock, 4 a.m. for Argentina, and
so
even
that's
for Cameron it was it was midnight. So
that's 12 a.m. UT, right? Is that
yes?
That's 12.
Universal time is 0000.
Right. 000 UT. So I was just looking up for Tarek. It's 2:36 a.m. So he literally is burning the midnight oil in the UAE, where I guess they probably pump a lot of midnight oil.
Yeah.
So that's
right.
Dedication for him to be up with us.
Yeah, correct. Thank you, man. That's cool.
That's right up there with Pekka, who stays up all night with us as well. So
well, they're astronomers, so they're built to stay up at night. Well, okay. Ken, thank you so much. We had, this program took an interesting start with polar alignment in the daytime. We talked about our events. We talked about Explore Alliance, Global Star Party. We answered some of your questions. Remember, if you're just kind of popping in and out and have not experienced our shows before, we're on Monday through Friday, okay? Usually at 4 p.m. Central, okay, during the day, we have these programs, except for tomorrow, which it will be at 1 p.m. Because we're heading out to San Antonio to do site selection for the upcoming eclipses that will be happening in 2023 and 2024. You'd think that we're getting a huge head start. We're not. Okay, there are people doing this. Eclipse chasers start very early on these things. So, but we're heading out there. We'll report on it. We'll take some video. I'll do some drone shots. We'll let you know what the lay of the land is like in Texas. So, anything else you'd like to add, Ken?
Go out and use your telescopes. Don't let and fight light pollution.
Right.
Yep.
All right. Okay.
Hey,
and Lubo says he has really bad weather right now. Lubo, you must have bought some astronomy gear because that's what makes it rain. So.
Yeah. So this has been a great show. I really love the interaction with the customers. This is with people who aren't customers, who are just out there and interested in astronomy. That's, like you said, what this show is about.
Well, that's the difference between television and this. Okay, you actually get to talk back and forth to us live, and so that's awesome. Okay, you guys keep looking up, like our friend Jack Horkheimer always said. There's reasons for it. You're going to see more in the sky no matter where you go. Until tomorrow at 1, okay, we'll see you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.